Hey, what's up? What it do? So I keep getting a lot of messages, a lot of inboxes about Larry Hoover, and is it possible that Larry Hoover can really get out of jail this time with the first step back and the provision in the first step back for compassionate release? To be straight to the point, man, my answer to that is that it's possible, and that he'll be in federal court September, I believe it's September 26th for a hearing. And a lot of people think that it's a sham. Let me tell you something. They're not going to move you from ADX, Florence, Colorado, all the way back to Chicago, Illinois, even if you were a Pee Wee League criminal, just to talk. Now, I'm not saying they can't deny it when they get there, but when the judge say come back to court from Colorado all the way to Chicago, Illinois, there's a good chance that they're going to think about whatever's filed in the motion for it. But to get straight to the point, Khalif Mujahid, formerly known as Fly, was in Colorado for over 20 plus years, just like Larry Hoover has been there for over 25 years at this time. Fly did 26 years there. But my point to compare the two is that they were on the same tier. You know, they spent many years together there. You know, they went over legal ideas there. They studied law there. And I know for a fact that Fly got out on a compassionate release. And I know that they went over the compassionate release and what were the rules and what was the criteria of that. So I think it could be a high probability that Larry Hoover could be granted a compassionate release. And just to give you a little bit of insight on what he got going on, it's been back in the news anyway, but the judge wants Larry Hoover to come all the way back to court to be able to be there face-to-face in the courtroom and open court for his compassionate release. They recently had it all in the news, national news, the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun, Washington Post, New York Times. Everybody is talking about it. You know, he's one of the biggest, most notorious guys that got a sentence out there amongst people that's supposed to be just, I'm going to say, homegrown domestic criminals, amongst other things that's out there. But check out what they saying. So Notorious Chicago gang kingpin Larry Hoover has had virtually no contact with the outside world for more than 2 decades. They say the co-founder of the Gangster Disciples street gang spends 23 hours a day in a concrete cell no larger than a parking space at the federal supermax prison in Colorado, and they argue he deserves a break from the life sentence handed down to him in 1998. And he got this life sentence in 1998, but for those who don't know, he had already been in prison all the way since 1973. Their bid to secure Mr. Hoover, who is now 73 years old, has lingered for years at the Dirksen Federal Courthouse, but now the judge has scheduled a hearing for this fall and ordered prosecutors to make Mr. Hoover present in person when it happens. The brief ordered Tuesday from U.S. District Judge John Blakey set a stage for a rare public appearance September 26 by a man who has been labeled one of the most notorious criminals in Illinois history, but who claims to now have renounced criminal organizations that he once led. Hoover acknowledged in a 2022 letter that some misguided people continue to hold me up as a symbol. But, he added, if I had any ability to influence them, I'd ask that they forget me and forsake the gang life forever. Let me read that again. But he added, if I had any ability to influence them, I'd ask them to forget me and forsake the gang forever. Hoover's attorney said, the September hearing will be his best chance since the late 1990s, aside from medical visits, to leave the notorious Supermax prison. Defense attorney Jennifer Bonjean told the Chicago Sun-Times that while prosecutors have gone out of their way to capitalize on some mythology around Hoover, sometimes it's important to remember there's a human being there. You are going to see a frail, elderly man, the attorney said. Justine Moore, another Hoover attorney, said, Hoover will also now have an important chance to plead his case directly to the judge. I think that it's important for anybody to have that opportunity, particularly when they are trying to make a plea for their freedom, Moore said. Prosecutors have adamantly opposed Hoover's bid for a new sentencing hearing. His lawyers have been asking for relief since the late 2019 order, the Federal First Step Act, which gives prisoners convicted of felony crimes a chance to cut short their time behind bars and allow elderly and sick inmates to seek compassionate release. It simply makes no sense now to give him a chance to run the Gangster Disciples, Lynch told the judge. That's the prosecutor. Hoover ordered a murder in 1973 that led to his conviction in state court and a sentence of 150 to 200 years in Illinois' prison systems. There, the feds say he ran a $100 million a year drug business, and tens of thousands of gang soldiers continued to work for him in Chicago and other cities. A federal investigation then led to Hoover's conviction for running a criminal enterprise. The judge gave Hoover a life sentence, another life sentence, in 1998. At the end of the conviction, the judge gave Hoover a life sentence in 1998 at the end of a contentious hearing. The judge told Hoover the charisma he used to gain loyalty of thousands was proof that he could have been a great man. You misused the gift you got from God, the judge told him. More than 20 years later, the judge responded to Hoover's request for a new sentencing hearing with an initial denial, referring to Hoover as one of the most notorious criminals in Illinois' history. Hoover is renowned and celebrated to this day by the Gangster Disciples, the judge wrote in 2021. To the extent that any one person can deter another to commit crimes, Hoover's life imprisonment symbolically demonstrates that the rule of law teaches even those in power who seem untouchable. But the judge issued his order without prejudice, giving Hoover an opportunity to try again. He did so in 2022, writing letters to the judge and to the public. I am no longer a member, leader, or even an elder statesman of the Gangster Disciples, Hoover wrote then. I want nothing to do with it now and forever. The judge took no action on Hoover's renewed request in nearly 2 years that followed. That judge died June 11th. Hoover's case was then reassigned to Judge Blakey, the same judge presiding over the prosecution of former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan. Blakey initially set a hearing in Hoover's case for August, but waived Hoover's appearance. On Tuesday, Blakey rescheduled Hoover's hearing for September 26, and he told prosecutors to make arrangements for Hoover to be at the hearing. So that means it's not going to be a virtual hearing. It's not going to be on telephone. It's not going to be on video on a big screen in some back room at ADX. That means that they're going to send the U.S. Marshals to get him and transport him to Chicago, Illinois, where it would probably be held in some type of, I don't know, for Hoover coming from ADX, there ain't no telling where they got to hold him because it's going to be inside the city. So he's probably going to be at some type of federal lockup within the city. They're not going to put him in no joint that's going to be local. But nevertheless, if Hoover is successful, in undoing the federal life sentence, he will still have the state murder sentence to serve, and he'd likely do so in the federal prison system. Reason being is that when Hoover first got caught up in the state system, they was trying to get him out of the state system anyway for the trial and for the investigation. So more than likely, a lot of people keep think he's going to go back to the Illinois prison system or the Department of Corrections. I doubt they would ever do that. What I think they would do before they would send him back to the Illinois Department of Corrections, they would give him an out-of-state placement, similar to what they did with Wayne Perry and Mustafa Zulu when they sent them out of Colorado to places like Shelton, Washington, and Walla Walla, Washington, and Minnesota and North Dakota. They sent people to these places all the time. I mean, the same way that they sent people from other state systems, like we got a homie named James Fowler, had too much influence and too much pull in the Maryland Department of Corrections, and he had a life sentence in Maryland, and they sent him to the federal system. But back to Hoover. If Hoover is successful in undoing the federal sentence, if Hoover is successful in undoing the federal life sentence, he will still have the state murder sentence to serve, and he'd likely do so in the federal prison system. But prosecutors have expressed concern that Hoover would launch legal attacks on that case as well. That's what I would do also. I'll bring y'all some more information on this after September 26th. But on a realistic tip, it's information in this right here for those people that follow true crime and follow some of these guys that have been locked up for all this time, like Jeff Fort, which is another partner, Larry Hoover, who they say founded the El Rukins, but he's also about 78 years old, and he's in ADX right now, and his compassionate release was denied. His compassionate release was denied just recently. However, you can see from this information I just gave you, Larry Hoover's compassionate release was denied as well before. So it doesn't mean that it's over. If Larry Hoover could get some play on this compassionate release, just like Fly got his compassionate release, then more than likely Jeff Fort will be able to come back. However, Jeff Fort's his case is a little different. All of those guys caught their life sentences in jail. Fly was in Lawton, got a multi-million-dollar RICO case out of Lawton, which is the D.C. Department of Corrections. Larry Hoover was in the Illinois Department of Corrections and got a multi-million-dollar case out of there. But those cases were for, things like drug dealing. There may have been some violence involved in it, but Jeff Fort case, which is different, and they denied it based on it because while he was in federal prison, he was accused of and convicted of accepting $2 million to bomb U.S. buildings on the behalf of Libyan dictator, ruler, Muammar Gaddafi. And every time that the judge look at his case for any type of relief and any type of leniencies, they quote that. But just like making parole, the facts of your crime, they never change. So look to see Jeff Fort back in court for a compassionate release, soon. But we're going to see what happened with Larry Hoover, September 26th. Free the real.
Larry Hoover, born in Jackson, Mississippi in 1950, Hoover began his life of crime early, joining a gang called the Supreme Gangsters by the age of 13. By his early 20s, he had been in and out of prison multiple times and survived at least 6 shooting attempts on his life. In 1969, after rival David Barksdale was wounded, Hoover merged the Supreme Gangsters with Barksdale's gang, forming the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. The gang soon dominated Chicago's South Side drug trade under Hoover's leadership. Even while incarcerated, Hoover's influence expanded. Trusted by the warden's office, he acted as a mediator, using his control over inmates to help quell prison riots and uprisings. Inspired by Mayor Richard J. Daley's biography, Hoover shifted from crime to growth and development, founding nonprofits and promoting education among gang members. These initiatives were later exposed as fronts for illegal activities. In 1997, following a 5-year undercover investigation, Hoover was convicted on drug conspiracy charges and received 6 life sentences. He's currently incarcerated at maximum security prison ADX Florence in Colorado.
Amount of time, it can have 2 effects. It can harden you, or it can make you think. And I thought, what have you thought? What are the thoughts like on a day-to-day basis? Incarceration. Well, basically, you think about preparing yourself for the future and preparing yourself for one day when you will return to the streets. You're prepared? Yes, I'm prepared. I've got employment. I want to do something for the community. I see these kids coming in here every day with 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Their life wasted just like I wasted mine.